Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are back with another very interesting review. And we often talk about the best Jurassic World figures and stuff like that, but we don't always talk about the worst. And specifically when it comes to the Velociraptors, which there is a ridiculously large amount of Velociraptor figures in the Jurassic World line, you sometimes don't realize that there were some pretty bad ones. Like, for instance, this guy is terrible. Not a good figure at all. I don't know what's going on with this. Again, probably Mattel's worst Velociraptor. But when it comes to the overall worst raptor, in my opinion, or the worst Velociraptors, in my opinion, in the Jurassic World or Jurassic Park toy line history, you absolutely have to be talking about these. So as you can see, and I'm probably going to have to move the camera up apparently, we have the entire Velociraptor Squad. Yes, definitely going to have to move the camera up. From Hasbro. Again, they had the toy line. This one, yeah, it's going to stand shockingly. The toy line license for Jurassic World, the original Jurassic World film. And they created these. Now, currently the Jurassic World line from Mattel is very clearly based toward children and adults. That's something that, wasn't always the case when it comes to Jurassic World toys, even though Jurassic Park currently is something that adults absolutely adore. I don't know so much that the Kenner Jurassic Park line was based towards adults and kids. I think it was just so good that adults then fell in love with it. And most of the people that do love that are usually the people that played with those as kids, now as adults collect them. However, again, like I said, Jurassic World figures currently from Mattel are definitely based toward collecting for adults and then, of course, kids. Whereas I think the Jurassic World line was focused primarily on children because it didn't seem as though they were trying too hard to please any sort of an adult collector. And one of the most prime examples of that would be these guys. But what's even weirder is even when it comes to kind of focusing your toys toward kids, they did a terrible job with these. And anybody that is a viewer of my channel for an extended period of time knows that I try to look at everything. Even if something is bad, I'll still try to look at it, and point it out with at least a somewhat positive light. I don't really like trash talking things. I'll tell you if something's bad or if something's not good about a figure, if something's wrong that I notice. But I don't try to trash talk stuff very often. Like some reviewers will just completely crap all over figures and then just call it a day. I try never to do that. But in this case, you have to look at this from even looking at it from a child's point of view. So what is a kid going to enjoy about a Velociraptor? First of all, they'll probably want some sort of articulated jaws so they can have a nice chomping action feature with their dinosaur. Well, we don't have that with these guys. They have completely stagnant jaws. The next thing I think that maybe kids would enjoy would be some sort of like a sound effect or even in some cases a light up effect. Well, we don't have any of that going on here, so that's out the window. And even worse, especially when it comes to a Velociraptor specifically, one of the things that kids are most going to enjoy would be the sickle claw. Oh wait, what's that? We don't have that. Are you kidding me? Hasbro somehow found a way to exclude the most defining feature of a Velociraptor and did not include the sickle claws. Even if we take these figures and look at them just as being poorly sculpted figures that don't match the raptors on screen, whether it be the sculpt or the paint, they really do not even remotely resemble the raptors that you see on screen. Sculpt, maybe they got kind of close in some instances, but paint, they're wrong by a mile. But, well, except for this one, I guess. If this is Charlie, I don't even remember which one is which at this point. But they did a pretty bad job as far as the paint apps on these figures go. That's what I'm basically trying to get at. But even if you look at those things, if they at least had the sickle claws, maybe it's somewhat passable, but to miss the sickle claws on a Velociraptor is completely inexcusable. And the fact that I guess Hasbro has zero quality control and nobody oversees anything they're doing and allowed this to kind of get released and get passed through is just completely baffling to me. I'll never, ever understand that. But anyway, what we're going to do is go ahead and jump to a closer look, and we'll check out how bad these figures truly are. So we'll try to look at the good of these figures first of all. So straight away you can see this here would be, I believe, Velociraptor Delta, if I remember correctly. And you can see again, even though it absolutely looks nothing like the raptor that you actually see on screen, sculpt-wise, it does at least have some fairly decent detailing to it. Like when you look at the skin texture and the scale detail, again, it's not half bad. You know, it looks pretty okay when it comes to what we've got going on, like even though the scale detail even doesn't really resemble the raptors on screen. For the most part, the detailing looks okay in certain areas, maybe a little muted. Like as you lead down here into the body, you can see definitely muted on the body area. But when you lead down into the legs and stuff, it looks all right. Up in the head here, it looks all right. Another thing that is a plus for the figure is some aspects of the paint. So straight away you can see the eyes. The eyes, although absolutely huge, are at least fairly nicely painted. I think the paintwork for the eyes looks pretty decent. And you do actually have nail paint on all of the fingers, all of the toe claws, except for, of course, our sickle claw. And even though, you know, we have nail paint, we still don't have the dew claws painted because everybody hates the dew claws. But again, you have that going for it. And I feel like that's probably where the good sides of these figures end. But again, you can see the Velociraptor Delta not looking so good overall. Of course, the sculpt is very exaggerated, quite far off compared to what you actually see on screen. The raptor is sculpted with its mouth in an open position, and you can see the mouth sports a pinkish tone, and the teeth are painted with kind of like a light yellowish tone, like an off-white bordering on a yellow, but they're very, very, very sloppily painted, like horribly sloppily painted. But again, as far as the coloration of Delta goes, we have a brown with a green here in the face, and then we basically just have a striping effect that moves down through the back of the raptor. That's not even close to the coloration that Delta actually has in the film, so terrible as far as that goes. You can see we do actually have a Jurassic World brand here on the side, which I do kind of like because that at least is like a callback to the old Kenner Jurassic Park line, so I have to give them some props, I guess, for that. But again, when it comes to the downsides, they don't just stop there. Of course, the fact that we don't have the toe claw correctly and everything is a downside. The paint is a downside. The articulation as well is a downside, because even though we do have arm articulation, that works okay as far as the articulation goes. But again, the articulation isn't so great on the figures. You basically only have leg articulation and arm articulation, and it's forward and back. You don't have neck articulation at all. There's no form of tail articulation, which, I mean, it probably would have just been a swivel, so that's not the end of the world, but at the very least, it would have been nice to have some form of neck articulation for the figure. And of course, I really would have loved jaw articulation, but we don't have that on the figure at all. And then, of course, the raptor is going to look pretty much the same. Over here, you have a very nice curve to the tail, at least. The coloration does run out with that striping onto the tail, but it doesn't run all the way. However, it does at least go further than most Mattel figures, so I guess we have to give them a little bit of a sort of an up for that, sort of a compliment. But outside of that, it's far and away one of the absolute worst-looking Velociraptors that has ever entered the toy line. On top of that, we also have Velociraptor Blue. Now, you might look at this and think, well, that's definitely not Velociraptor Blue. Blue is a gray color with a blue stripe, and the gray color even has some slight hints of blues to it. This one is a green with a black stripe, and the black stripe doesn't even remotely match up to what you actually see on the raptor in the film. And then you have like a random striping effect that is also not existent on Velociraptor Blue in the film. You do have a little coloration here on the underside, I guess, so they have to have a little bit of extra paintwork on Blue because she's the star of the movie, but it ends as you lead out into the tail. The articulation remains the same on this one. Again, just arm and leg articulation, and apparently it's really, really stuck. I guess if you don't move them much, they get very stiff. I don't know. Maybe they're always that stiff because I actually did not purchase these when the film came out. I purchased them, you know, through secondhand sellers later on. And I was not interested at all in these when it first had come out. You can see we have a purplish tone for the inside of the mouth, pretty generic looking sculpt work. Like you can see how straight the inside of the mouth there is with the skin stretching and stuff. The tongue doesn't look very good. The paint, again, is super, super sloppy on those teeth. Like really, really bad. At least I guess they kind of have that stripe where it should be a blue stripe coming up and over into the eye. They did actually run that up correctly on this side, which is weird to see even a slight bit of correctness on this figure. It doesn't look perfect, but I mean, it comes up and through the eye and stops short of the eye on that side. And that is something that you do see on Velociraptor Blue in the film. So, I mean, in a sea of disgust, there's at least some sort of a ray of sunshine, I guess. Not much of one, though. The clouds are about to take right back over. You can see, again, no neck articulation, and the raptor, of course, doesn't have the correct claws. You can see, again, though, that we do have the Jurassic World stamp, which I do like on the figure. And, again, everything else looks pretty much just like it did on the first raptor. On Velociraptor Delta, we had seen just differently positioned. You can see the tail is sculpted in a different position, and that is at least something that is also okay for the raptors, is the fact that Hasbro at least gave each raptor a different sculpt. They didn't just give you 4 of the same raptor just repainted. And again, the fact that they're very large, I guess, could be viewed as maybe a plus for the figure. But overall, it is probably the worst Velociraptor Blue that has ever existed. Then we have the only raptor in the entire set that almost looks like its screen counterpart, just a really lazy version. This would be Velociraptor Charlie. You can see Velociraptor Charlie doesn't even look that bad in the head sculpt. Like, the head sculpt looks okay-ish. Not, again, close to what it looks like on screen, but at least closer than the others. But you can see we basically just have a green tone and then a striping. It also picks up right there in the bottom of the neck and then runs out onto the tail about halfway, just like we saw in all of the others. There's no coloration here on the underside at all, so we don't have much in the way of coloration. Of course, the fact that it's green means my camera hates it. No neck articulation, even though it really does look like there should be, but there definitely is not. We only have the arm and leg articulation, just like we had seen on the others. I kind of almost like the positioning of the arms because they're kind of held into the body, almost in a natural position, but they're also held out away from the body, so it looks very awkward at the same time. And then you can see, again, definitely differently posed compared to the other one, and has a very strong curve to the tail. The tail actually looks a little bit short on this one, shorter than the others. But again, just like the others, absolute garbage when it comes to Hasbro. Definitely not a good version of Velociraptor Charlie. However, it's the closest one in this set to actually looking like it looks on screen. And then my favorite raptor from the Raptor Squad is Echo. And this is their attempt at Echo. And I will say, I mean, kind of, almost, sort of like they were headed in the right path as far as the coloration goes, but this yellowish tone that they've given her is just so much more brighter than it should be, and the tones of color for this patterning, which the patterning isn't even close to the way it would look on Echo, it's also off, but closer to looking like the raptor from the film, more so than Velociraptor Blue at least. But again, the raptor is sculpted with its mouth wide open. The teeth are yet again very sloppily painted. The eyes at least look pretty decent. Again, something I can say about all of these raptors is the eye paint was pretty nice. But again, no articulation in the jaw, and only has arm and leg articulation. Just like with the others, the actual sculpting and fine detailing looks fairly decent in some areas. Like you can see, the scale detail and stuff looks nice here in the face, but then as you lead down into the body, it becomes super muted, just like we saw on all of the others. The detail does pick back up once you lead down into the arms and legs, just like we saw on all of the others. The nails are all painted, but the dew claws, and then of course we still don't have the sickle claws on the figure. We again have a very strong curve to the tail, which at least kind of gives them, I guess, a little bit of like a majestic sort of a look. But yet again, definitely not a good version of Velociraptor Echo. This entire Raptor Squad, as I already said, in my opinion, are the worst Velociraptors to ever enter any Jurassic Toyline. Also, I want to state that I underestimated the laziness of Hasbro, and earlier I did say that they were all different sculpts. In fact, they are not. As you can clearly see, Velociraptor Blue and Velociraptor Echo are, in fact, the exact same sculpt, just different paint jobs. But as far as a size goes for our raptors, primarily I would say they're all a very similar size. They're just positioned very differently, and the head sculpts look super goofy. on specifically this one looks really bad. But I will just measure this one raptor because I don't feel like we need to measure all of them. Lengthwise, you're looking at around 11 inches or 28 centimeters. Now it's going to fall over. And then height-wise on this one here on Velociraptor Delta, you are looking at, if it would stay standing, about 5 3/4 inches or just a hair under 15 centimeters. For a size comparison, you can see here with Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Clovisaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being that these Velociraptors are quite sizable, just like I had said. They are definitely very large, so I mean, at least they get props in that department. Kids probably enjoyed the fact that they were pretty big, but still absolute atrocities. Now, I don't feel like we really need too many comparisons this time around, mostly because these figures have been out for a very long time, and I'd imagine if you're a Jurassic collector, you've at the very least seen them before. But for a difference in size between your average Mattel Velociraptor and your, again, Hasbro version, you can see that the Hasbro version is significantly larger than the Mattel version. And also something that's actually kind of interesting. Now, I don't know if this is something that is common knowledge. I don't know if, I guess maybe they're from different sets, but there is actually a different variant of Velociraptor Blue out, and it's ever so slight. I noticed it when I was actually looking for these figures to bring in and review here. One of the Velociraptor Blues actually have the Jurassic World stamp here with like a light off-white. The other one has it with a yellow. Now, again, I don't know if that means they're from different sets or what exactly, but I did notice that, and if you are a variant collector that for some reason wants to own all of the Hasbro figures, I did want to point that out to you again, just so that you're able to complete your collection correctly. So these Jurassic World Hasbro Velociraptors are absolute garbage, and honestly, if it weren't for the fact that I have this problem in my brain that states that I want to someday try to have, at least as far as the dinosaurs go, a complete collection of Jurassic toys that includes from Kenner all the way up to Mattel, which unfortunately includes Hasbro there in the middle, I wouldn't even have ever purchased these. And in fact, I never really did try, I don't think. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think I acquired most of these through different lots, and that's how I got them all, but I could be wrong. It's been so long since I purchased these. But again, the Raptors are definitely hot garbage. I definitely do not recommend searching them out and finding them and adding them to your collection unless for some reason you enjoy them, because I mean, if you look at them from the standpoint of maybe not being related to Jurassic World and they're just like some kind of crazy raptor toy, you might be able to find some fun in these figures, but even when it comes to those, they're still so lackluster. The fact that they sport very little articulation, including no neck articulation or jaw articulation, is instantly a major downside for these figures. You know, when it comes to like Mattel, they do have figures like that, the basic figures, which still somehow sport more articulation than these guys, but they're, you know, labeled and advertised as basic. That's kind of their gimmick. That's their point. That's what they're going for. Whereas these were the mainline releases, I believe, for the Velociraptors from Jurassic World. Shows you that, again, Hasbro just didn't even try. The sculpts do not look like the Raptors from the films at all. They definitely did not study the actual Raptors when preparing for the release of the toy line. I don't know what material they were given from Universal and, you know, given to kind of work with, but clearly if they were given actual renders or something of the Raptors from the films, they didn't utilize them when creating these because they look as generic as far as a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Raptor goes and do not capture the likeness that you see on screen. The sculpting and detailing, as far as the fine detail goes, looks pretty okay in certain spots. Like in the face, it doesn't look half bad. In the arms and legs, it looks okay until you move down to the foot and realize it's missing the sickle claw. But other than that, you know, as you move through the body, a lot of the detailing through the course of the body is quite muted, does not look good. The paint apps are honestly terrible on all of them. They don't look good. They do not at all resemble what you see on screen. The closest would be Velociraptor Charlie, and even that one is incredibly lackluster. The articulation is incredibly limited and not very fun. There's no action features with the figures at all. The only real defining feature I think that these figures have at all is the fact that they're fairly large, and that's pretty much about all they have going for them. So, as a whole, as I mentioned, the worst Velociraptors in Jurassic Toy toy history. Definitely not recommended by me, but if you are interested, I can try to find you guys a link on eBay, because that's probably the only place you're really going to find them currently. So again, if you want to add these to your collection and probably poison your shelf, check the link that I will include in the description. If I was able to find these guys, I should be able to, because not too many people like to keep them around. They usually try to sell them. So again, check the links in the description, and other than that, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.